afternoon Denver Startup Week. The day continues to roll on. So glad everyone's here. We're down to the final 3 or 4 sessions in this building, and it's just getting more awesome with each one. So super, super excited about our next panel discussion and our fireside chat. The next discussion is a highlight and fireside chat with our very own Colorado's David Cohen, who's the founder of Techstars, a founder of Techstars. And this discussion is really around Techstars from Boulder to the world, and just give you some insights and background on David, what Techstars is thinking about, where Techstars is going, and most importantly, for all the innovators and entrepreneurs out there, ways and things that you can learn from David's venture portfolio. That Techstars is one of the largest venture portfolios in the world today. So it's a super awesome treat. He's going to be interviewed today by Victor Wang. Victor Wang is the founder and CEO of Right to Start. Right to Start is the leading policy organization out of Washington, D.C. to provide some national perspective on how we can stand up for entrepreneurs' rights, policies, and activities that drive entrepreneurship, innovation, and civic entrepreneurship leadership across our communities. And so this should be an absolutely awesome session and discussion with David and Victor. And with that, I'll invite them both up to the stage. Victor?
How's the week going, everybody? Yeah? It's an amazing ecosystem you have here in the Denver area. I've seen a lot of ecosystems across the country, and this is a special one. There's a particular energy and vibe and collaborative spirit here that is rare, and so you should be very proud of what you all built. David, thank you for joining me. You've been part of this in the building of this ecosystem.
Little part. It's been 17 and a half years I've been investing here, maybe 18, 19 actually, as I think about it, because I was doing some angel before. But you're right. I mean, I love hearing the give first stuff in the previous session too. That's definitely the vibe here, right? Everybody helps each other be successful. Somebody walked up to me in the back and said, how do I do that? I don't have a lot of resources. And just start small, do something, be helpful, start a group, right? And it's like, that's everybody's attitude, and that's what makes it work. It's really cool.
Well, you see a lot of ecosystems. How would you say this is unique or special compared to all these other ecosystems you travel to?
I think that's it. I mean, the world is catching on, right? I mean, Brad Feld, my co-founder, wrote the book literally, Startup Communities book. People sort of try to imitate what they're seeing in Colorado now around the world, because it's like, wow, there's a place like Boulder, or a place like Denver that people didn't think of, that maybe weren't the mecca of entrepreneurship, that now all of a sudden are these really vibrant places, and amazing startups you've heard of and you use are coming from there, and they want to figure out how to do that. So I think it is that give first attitude. It's the ability to promote each other, tell each other stories, that has really worked. But now other communities are figuring that out, and I think that's good, actually. It's great for entrepreneurs everywhere.
That's one of the things I see a lot. I've traveled a lot to different places too, and so much of it is people think you have to build big things, big fancy things, and a lot of it's actually, the core of it is just the spirit of how people interact with each other, right? And you've probably seen places where that doesn't happen, right? And you've got to go in and help try to restart that.
For sure. I mean, I think there's, especially outside the U.S., a lot of places that I've been where the attitude was, well, you're asking me to get involved and mentor a startup? Like, why would I do that, right? I've done this amazing thing, or I have this amazing experience, or, I come from a family that's done this amazing, why would I give in that way? What do I get? And so there's sort of cultures somewhere, some places around the world where that's not normal, it's not typical, but even they, as you travel to lots of places in the world now, are starting to change, and failure is being embraced as part of the process, or giving first and helping other people without any expectation of getting anything back is now the social norm. That takes time to change in a lot of places, but it is clearly changing in startup communities everywhere.
And that's one of the theses of Brad's work and your work, which is this stuff takes time, right? It's slow growth. It's changing over many, many years.
Yeah, can I do my favorite exercise with the crowd?
Please.
Oh, cool. It's a 20-year view, right? Like, who here is an entrepreneur? Can you keep your hand up? I know it's tedious. If you're an entrepreneur, please keep your hand up. are you going to be here in 20 years also? If you're going to be here in 20 years, as long as something bad doesn't happen to you and you're an entrepreneur, keep your hand up. If you're moving, you can go ahead and put your hand down. But if you know you want to be here in 20 years, you love the community, keep the hand up, right? So the entrepreneurs who love it and are going to be working on this for 20 years, these are the leaders. The reason they're here is because they're the leaders of the startup community here. Thank you for putting your hands up. That's a lot of people that love it here, know they want to be here in 20 years, and are the entrepreneurs that people like us can support, right? And that's our role.
But entrepreneurs don't often think of themselves as leaders. They often think of themselves as just they're building their company in isolation, right? They're nose to the grindstone. You're saying they're leaders in the community. That's not common to think of it that way.
They're going to get together, talk about what they need, what they want. They're going to give feedback to the investors, service providers, right, in the area. And we have to follow what they want, right? And they're leaders in that sense. And so step into that role, tell us what you need, tell everyone what you need, because it's our job, the government's job, everybody else's job to follow what you all need, right? Nobody else should be leading but the entrepreneurs.
Any kind of 17 years of storied legacy of Techstars. You really defined the accelerator model across the world. You helped spread it everywhere. You built a great legacy and raised the profile of the Denver, Boulder area. Takeaways for the entrepreneurial community here. Like, what have you learned that is worth sharing with everybody here? In one sentence.
Wow. Do I get 6 words? Community, 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 community. You say we did that, I say they did that, right? I say the companies did it, the mentors did it. We provided a little bit of an organizing construct, but everybody leaned into that and was hungry for that, right? And so, I mean, to me, it's network effect, the value of that as a virtuous cycle over a long period of time. Like, businesses that I've been around that have network effects built in are so much more powerful than those that don't. Hard to have network effects if you're not including people, right? And finding ways that they can contribute to the common good through what you're doing, or at least your community's common good. I think that's been a big part of the magic in more than one sentence, but maybe just 3.
That's very powerful and a unique perspective on entrepreneurship, which often is viewed as like a solo activity in much of the world.
But if think about any company that got really big or had a lot of impact, big isn't necessarily a goal, but had a lot of impact, they're going to have these built-in network effects, and a lot of them, most of them, maybe almost all of them, leveraged sort of the community around them to be successful, right? And paid attention to that community and actually made the world better for that community, not just for themselves as entrepreneurs, but for a broader community that they impacted.
Well, at Techstars, you built this tremendous global community. It's one of the biggest entrepreneurial communities in the world, and just like startups do, you've had to pivot as well, right? You've had to learn, and it's been a lot of change and growth in recent times. Any lessons in terms of that community and the pivoting and the growth that you can share?
My biggest one is you can't go backwards, and so you have to go forwards. You can stand still, but that's not super helpful. And so, think about everything you learn along the way, but you can't go back and change it, right? And so you can do things in the future. And so it's always focus on what you can control. People will tell me, it's hard raising money, the last few years. Okay. Yep. Fact of life. That is harder than it was 5 years ago. And a lot of people maybe in this room haven't been through as many cycles.
It's easier than it was 15 years ago. So there's that too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of money being thrown around. It was summer for startups for a really long time, right? Probably from about 2009 until 3 years ago. If that's the environment you've lived in, it's just puzzling as to why the world is so difficult now. But if you were in 2007 when we started, 2006 technically, at the end of 2006, ran our first program in 2007, that was starting a recession and a period where the housing crisis was happening, and valuations were really low, money wasn't flying around, and that wasn't the first time I had seen that as an entrepreneur, right? And so this was a really long, good period we had, and it's actually coming back pretty quickly, which is exciting, right? It's good to see.
There's talk, in the national news, the Fed lowered the interest rate. We've been in a high interest rate environment now for a while, and that was kind of a real shock to the system, right? In the entrepreneurial
You don't think that has anything to do with politics?
No, it doesn't at all. But these macro things affect entrepreneurs, right? They seem 30,000 feet, but they affect you on the ground because it has a ripple effect across the capital markets and your work. Like lessons for what advice would you give to entrepreneurs? 2024, interest rate environment still higher than it's been in 15 years, let's say, and where does this go?
Yeah, it's a slightly better time to buy a house, right? So, I mean, for most people, I think they would say day to day, not a lot of impact on what they're doing. But if the trend continues over time, optimism is super helpful, right? Versus pessimism. And so as people get a little more loosened up on, okay, things are, maybe starting to move in a different direction, the cost of capital goes down a bit and it's helpful to everybody. So I think most entrepreneurs, in my experience, would say it's that trend over a period of time. We want to be in a trend where things are feeling good and going in the right direction versus, one data point or one thing in the interest rate or something really affecting them. It probably doesn't.
Well, like me, you've got a little gray hair going on.
That's the 17 and a half years of Techstars. Yeah.
So you've been through a few cycles. You've seen these ups and downs, dot-com boom, financial crisis, COVID crisis, all these ups and downs. A lot of entrepreneurs haven't seen this before, right? Like what a full wave, what a full arc of a sort of a wave, economic wave looks like. What should entrepreneurs, startups do in these types of waves?
Well, one of the cool things about cliches, which y'all know the cliches, lots of great companies get started in down markets, and
They say it's a great time to build, but it's really hard to build in down markets.
Necessity is the mother of invention. There's all these, never let a good crisis go to waste. All this stuff. Like cliches are cliches for a reason. They're not always true, but they're usually, kind of, there's some nugget in there. And so I think it's actually a super awesome time to be an entrepreneur. The early stage actually has not been that highly affected. People here may say, boo, no, we're really affected. But, a lot of deals are still happening. The valuations are actually, in okay shape. There's capital out there. It's not as free-flowing as it was. People are doing one deal, not four, right? But, great companies are still finding that capital and getting funded. So I think, when there's a little bit less noise, there's a little bit less, maybe people trying, talent flows to the best things. And I think it's a moment of opportunity to go change the world again, right? And we'll look back in 10, 20 years and say, yep, a lot of cool stuff happened. Just like we look back on 2009 and say, that's when, the SendGrids and the Twilios and the Ubers were born, right? In that moment of, sort of coming out of it, which is where we are right now.
So this is sort of a moment where things are starting to kind of move back up in the markets and the system. Any patterns you're seeing emerge of what types of companies are working, what types of strategies are working, what types of, tactics are working?
A couple. Have you guys heard of AI? No, okay. I'm not going to talk about it. I think that people go where the money is, and that includes LPs that are investing in VCs. It includes the entrepreneurs that want to get money from the VCs. And so, of course, as everything moved to blockchain or everything moved to mobile, in different waves, or frankly, everything moved to internet, you're seeing, similar overinvestment in that category. That's great because amazing stuff will come out of it.
The money at the top sort of moves in waves and herds.
That's right.
And you're affected down.
And it's going to get massively overinvested in, and that's okay because we're going to get amazing innovation out of it. And hopefully we're smarter than we were in 1999. I think we are, being a little more sensible there. And so, that is, one obvious mega trend or context. And the reality to me of, the AI stuff is that it's sort of like mobile or like the internet, right? It's just part of it. It's not a vertical, right? It's what it is. And so just like you heard, if you were here in the last session, there's companies are going to leverage it and companies that don't. And the ones that do will be here, and the ones that don't won't be here because, like, what software internet companies aren't leveraging mobile today or aren't leveraging the internet? Just the dead ones, right? And to me, it's sort of like that. Don't worry, you don't have to do it right now. But as that capability evolves, it becomes part of the infrastructure, part of the stack. It is just part of the stack. It's like, the way you think about the internet or think about mobile, that sort of intelligence Wait till you get another wave that hits you. Two have never come this quickly, I don't think, which is quantum. And Colorado is really involved in that, which is super cool. You put quantum and AI together, you have the eradication of many diseases, you have the extension of lifespans. I mean, you have real systemic change to the way the world works. I mean, what an amazing time to be an entrepreneur in the context of those things coming together, right?
It's a powerful moment, and you've had major trends in technology that have kind of been dormant and slowly building over the years. And I think COVID sort of things kind of went into, at least they're quiet on the surface, but underneath there was a lot of work that was going on. Are there companies that you'd love to see more of that you're not seeing enough of, and there are companies you'd love to see less of that maybe you're just seeing too many of those types of companies?
I got my media training. I learned not to answer the questions I don't want to answer. So that second one, there's somebody in here doing the second thing that I'm about to say, and I don't want to. No, I mean, I'll answer the one about what I'd love to see more of. And I started talking about this about 5 years ago. I thought about what if, a company like an Uber or a company that like an Airbnb, someone that just did something big, had put that energy into the real problems of the world. Not that moving people around isn't a real problem, or sleeping on someone's couch isn't a real problem. It's more of a problem now than it was actually before. But I think what if they put that energy into getting water to where it needs to go, or getting food to where it needs to go, or eradicating cancer or whatever. That type of investment, that type of money, that type of entrepreneurial energy into things that are really truly important for the world. I would love to see more people doing that, because there are many that are, right? But like, we can solve big problems. Like, that's what entrepreneurship does, And so I have a construct I use with people when I talk to them about what's next. A company will exit. They'll say, I don't know, what am I going to do next? I say, okay, here's the thought exercise. This is the last startup you can ever create, right? You have one last startup. What's it going to be, right? What do you want to do with that? Because it's not an intermediate thing in your career. It's the last one. It gets people thinking differently, right? And so it's just those kinds of things that I think can be really huge. If more people did it, I think that would be awesome. They're hard. They're problems for a reason, right? And all innovation is awesome, and it's the creator of all net new jobs, and it's really important, right? But you ask me, I'd love to see more of that. And
you guys are in a particular advantage because at Techstars, you do a lot of that stuff. You have accelerators in healthcare and the physical sciences and all kinds of levels of innovation. That stuff is hard, though. Like I did a startup doing electrochemical manufacturing, doing water filters, getting into the water industry. Extraordinarily hard. Not a lot of capital available in the types of traditional VC funds we've seen grow in the last couple decades. Not a lot of easy markets to penetrate. Hard corporate partners, hard corporate venture partners. How do people approach that problem of the difficulty of breaking into these tough markets? I'll clarify. I'm not saying I have judgment if you're not doing a thing like that. You asked me what I'd like to see more of as an investor. I'd like to take more shots like that. Maybe because I feel like I've had some success as an investor, and I want to have more impact as I go forward. So it's a personal answer. It's not a judgment about anything else. And yeah, it can be really hard, right, to find capital for a lot of these challenges because people think they're unsolvable. Well, interestingly, with AI and with quantum, things that were actually literally unsolvable become solvable, right? And may actually get solved really quickly for the company that's in the right position at the right moment to do it, right? I think, people don't understand quantum. Maybe you've heard a lot about it lately, I don't know, but if we can figure that out, and we're starting to figure it out, it's not like, oh, we can process stuff 1 million times faster. It's like we can do things that we can't do. Like solving major medical issues, where they come from, understanding how pathology works, trivial problem. Detecting, I always use the thing I heard Dan Caruso say, you want to know if a cow farted on the horizon? Quantum computing can tell you that, no problem. Easy to monitor that,
right? I don't know why you'd want to know that, but you can do things, right, that you couldn't do before. And so timing, like getting the timing of things exactly right, new possibilities, it creates whole new applications that people haven't even thought of. It's sort of like the internet, right? All of a sudden you can do all this stuff that computing can't do today. You've got encryption, cool, that's awesome. It's invalid in the world of quantum. It's useless, right? So who's going to win that race? I actually think that's the bigger one, personally.
I've seen developments coming out of AI around like faster protein folding and targeting therapeutics. This is all like massive increases, things that would take years being done in the matter of hours, right? It's a phenomenal sea change, and we've barely seen the surface of what's going to happen in this thing. Right?
Yeah, it's going to come all at once, come on us really quickly.
Years building to become overnight, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of Matt Mullenweg, WordPress. He was at the first Techstars event. He said, yeah, WordPress is an overnight success that took 20 years. This is like a 50-year horizon, probably. I do believe people think it's crazy. No reason people aren't going to live to be 150, 200. What does that do to the world, right? Now, we may not see that, but our kids might see it, or we may be affected by it. I mean, it's working on dogs, it's working on mice. They'll figure it out.
At Right to Start, the work I'm doing, we engage with governments and civic life, and you've also benefited at Techstars by working with governments around the world. Often, sometimes you're partners, even sponsors for bringing in accelerators across the world. What is the role of government and society at large to support entrepreneurs, or not?
I think there's an important role, right, which is supporting the leaders that we just saw raise their hand and shining a light on them, and creating an environment in which it's easier to do the things they want to do, but also protecting society from some of the things that they want to do. All those roles are there. I don't, there are governments we work with that want to be the leader of the startup community, not in the U.S. generally, but around the world. And they bring us in because they want us to roll out the blueprint we rolled out here, right, with Startup Weekend and Startup Weeks, and the different programs we have, accelerators, and so on. Like, can you help us with that? Roll out a capital stack. Like, get this spark going. We're willing to invest 20 years, right, in doing that. But then they want to pick the companies, or then they want to require the companies to stay in the city that they come to. I said, no, that's not how entrepreneurship works, right? This is a complex network. People are going to have ties to you because you help them, but you can't force them to stay. You get adverse selection. So too much control actually works against them in some cases, right? And so a lot of this is cultural and trying to teach them that. And some of them get it and some of them don't, right? I think we're really lucky here that most people here get that it's a support function, right? Not a leadership function.
And want to open it up for questions as well. So think about a question that you might be interested in asking. Yes. Yeah.
My question is...
Here, there's a microphone right
Sorry, that happened quick.
here. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, stand up, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Olympia, like in the Olympic Games, that's how it's written. I have a minimum viable product for, and it's AI to help people study and pass licensure exams. The question is, because it's AI, of course there is competition. There is also competition from conventional products that are very expensive. The expenses to run these can become really huge from the beginning, starting from lawyers, let's say. And because there's so much open source, and so one needs to be able to protect the product. And so the question is, how do you raise funding for this?
How do you raise funding for an AI startup with expensive sort of protection costs, right? Or patenting, those types of costs.
Yeah, and of course, the people you want. how it works. There we go. So the people you want to hire, because it's high tech, and of course, yeah, you can outsource, but in the beginning, I probably want to work with people that are nearby, and I can talk. Yeah. In other words, they're expensive.
Yeah.
People are expensive.
So I do an introductory workshop that any Techstars alums here have seen that takes 2 hours on that topic. So it's very introductory.
So, ready to go? Let's start.
Yeah, I can't teach a fundraising class in a quick answer, but there are resources. I mean, hey, people forget about one of the best funding sources in the world, which I call customers. Revenue, right? Like you can charge people money for your software is definitely one way. People forget about that and sometimes jump right to venture. But when you need to raise capital, there are many different sources, right? Angel, venture capital, grant money. Figuring out the right one for you is a big part of the equation. And then there's resources of networks that help you do that. And that's sort of what Techstars does as an example, and there are many others. I'll shout out Sweater. They'll help you with that. Like there's different organizations, right, that'll help you do that. And getting into those networks and becoming a part of that is a learning experience. So I don't have a way to answer it super quickly. It takes storytelling. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of pitches, and the story's got to be really great and compelling to raise money.
Great. Questions?
Another question? Raise your hand. I'll come to you. Oh, of course, you're
corner.
all the way over there. I knew it. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David, software engineer and entrepreneur based in Boulder. I'm really inspired by the idea of like giving first and always looking for, how can I give? Because I'm kind of full-time on it right now, so I have time to give. What do you not see being given in our communities that people should spend more time on? Thanks.
I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you for the question, first of all, because the intent is awesome. And I actually did a podcast. I have a podcast called Give First, on which Brad and I talk about the notion of give first. And we talk about entrepreneurs and ways they've done it and ways they've benefited from it. So if you like podcasts, that's a way to get some ideas and get inspired around it. But there's one episode especially that I did with an alum who came to me and said, I'm full-time on my startup. I don't have a lot of resources. The way I see you guys giving, like, hey, Brad, I see your name on the bathroom at the hospital, that you made a donation, like literally, I can't do that, right? Like I don't have that level of resource. So don't think about it as order of magnitude. Don't think about it as it has to be some big grand gesture or half your time. I would think about it as, can it be 1% of your time, right? What can you do with that? You, David, are an expert in something. How can you share that with the world? How can you share that with your community? You know a lot more about something than I do. I don't know what that something is, but I guarantee it's true, right? And so I talked to somebody in the back that started a meetup for runners. Yes, for runners. That's an idea. Just get people together that have common interests and let the serendipity happen. So, it could be anything from a donation to an organization you like in the community, to a little effort, to just mentorship. Like, hey, this is what I know. Advertise that. Let people know that you care about sharing that. And, they'll find you and you can give it to them. And it doesn't take a lot of energy. So it doesn't have to be huge. It'll get bigger as you do have success with your company. As you do have outcomes, you'll do more.
I'll offer an additional thought to that point. So I've lived in many places, and I ended up living a decade in Silicon Valley. I moved to Silicon Valley in 2007, and I went with a lot of expectations of what Silicon Valley was. But within a few months, I realized it wasn't what people thought. Most people think it's the big companies, the big money, the big names. But actually, Silicon Valley is powered by the individual conversations, summed up, which is people sitting together when someone says, hey, I've got an idea to do something. In other places, in a lot of markets, the answers you'll get will be, oh, that's too hard. Are you sure you want to do that? Or it just takes time to do those things, to get those conversations going. In the Valley, the immediate response was, that's really cool. Let me introduce you to somebody else that's doing the same thing. I know someone investing in this space. I just read an article about it. Let me share it with you. Like that kind of thing is cheap, it's fast, and the sum of thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of those little tiny acts add up, and they transform an entire economy.
We've got one over here, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Jordan Pilot. I'm a volunteer community organizer for 1 Million Cups.
Yay.
I'm really psyched about thank you for your work with the Kauffman Foundation there too. I'm really psyched about the entrepreneurship community that we have in Denver, but I was wondering what strategies or tactics y'all have seen for successfully bringing new generations of entrepreneurs into the community, making them aware of everything we have to offer.
Yeah, we did an event. I'll never forget. Some of you may have been involved in it. It was probably 15 years ago, and it was so cool. We wanted a certain type of person to come check it out, like whatever the demographic was. I think for us it was engineers, because at that time, you know, like designers today, like so sought after. I'm kidding a little bit, but the event was, let's raise sponsorship from the community and let's fly in 100, or I can't remember, it's 500. If anybody else remembers, many hundreds of engineers got paid trips, came to a CU football game, got to meet all the companies in the area, you know, rode around on buses together, zero cost to them, got to experience the community, and that was organized by the community. It was so cool. And a bunch of those people ended up taking jobs, but everybody who didn't started telling their friends about how great it was, right? Like, oh, such a cool place to be, and the weather was amazing. Strategic, by the way, on the weather. Right about now would be a good time to do that. But, you know, it's sort of, how do you show them? And it's just being braggadocious, however you can do that, right? Like having people visit or just talking about each other's success stories. The world does hear this community. It's sort of surprising. I go a lot of places, I say, I can't hear you guys. I don't know what's going on here, and I'm not going to pick a place, but, you know, wherever I am, I don't hear the same level of storytelling. So keep telling the stories, but it's just getting creative. Like, who do you want to see it? How do you get them here? How do you get them to experience it?
And thank you for hosting the 1 Million Cups. I know it takes a good amount of effort to run those. I don't know, do all of you know 1 Million Cups, by the way? Yes? Oh, great. Weekly event, where they bring entrepreneurs together to share their stories. Community comes together to help them. And I think one of the challenges of 1 Million Cups is always finding new people to come and finding entrepreneurs to present. And that's a lot of heavy lifting by the organizers to build those networks. I would say that it's an ongoing challenge, which is how do you keep finding fresh blood. But a lot of it is it's the culture, it's the strength of, it sounds very cliched, but the culture and the strength of the networks and the speed of the networks. I was just in Fargo, North Dakota, so I just took this cross-country road trip where I was in 15 cities across the country and met with the entrepreneurial communities there. In Fargo, North Dakota, every week for their 1 Million Cups, they created a new version of it, but they get 150 people every week showing up to hear 2 startups talk about what they're working on, and the community all shows up and asks them how they can help. And I met with people in Fargo, and they said, in the community, I met a guy that just moved there, and he said, I went to one thing, and I immediately got sucked into the entire network. It's sort of that they just got vacuumed in, and the network was this sense of no wrong doors. Like you open one door, and suddenly you're into everything in the community. And so it takes work to build that, but they've created a culture now where that's just, it's 360 degrees surrounding them.
Who's pretty new to the startup community, even if you're from here?
Yeah, go to that event. Yeah.
Okay, so there's always just great visibility for whatever it is you care about. It helps.
Question over here. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Linda Nicole. I have a talent agency called Techstars Talent. So when AI started taking jobs away, I was working on problem solving, how to save some of those jobs, and put together a business plan for licensing likeness, backed by blockchain, and partnering with networks so that we can certify organic content. What do you think of that idea, and do you think there's any resources that could help me put that team together that I don't have yet?
I think you were just pitched, David.
It was an elevator pitch, I'd say. Yeah. Positive, high-level reaction. Again, I just use the community in any way I can. Anybody interested in that? Sounded sort of interesting to you because you might have a connection there? No? Nobody? Talent, AI, likeness licensing? If you know anybody that's interested in that, that's what we need over here, right? And so I'm happy to try to help with that. If you want to email me, david@techstars.com. I might have a few people in my world that'd be interested in talking to you about that. But I think, the trick is in the doing, right? There's an opportunity there.
Question here.
Hi, my name's Tyler Bigham. Been a deep tech product designer, commercializer for 15 years. Looking to potentially have a new startup around some sort of product to improve society, preferably in clean tech. I'm wondering if you guys have any advice on how to narrow down to one idea, what would be the most impactful, something like that. David, what you said earlier kind of really resonated with me, but curious to hear from both you guys on this.
I mean, this is sort of like, how do I get to my idea, right? And it's a wild guess, but my experience is what space you want to be in. You just don't know exactly what you want to do in that space. I think entrepreneurship is basically a process of unsucking something that sucks. Like, successful startups take a thing that sucks and they unsuck it, right? And so, in that world that you are interested in, do you see a thing that sucks? Can you start trying to make that a little better for somebody, right? And I think that startups are meandering things. They're listening to customers. They rarely have the right idea on day one, right? We could take a little poll, but I won't bother because I know it's true. If you have a big company, you've meandered around, right? You didn't have it exactly right in the beginning. So I think one foot in front of the other. If you can sort of generalize that to something you care about, my guess is you could write 8, 10 things on a whiteboard and say, these are the things I'm thinking about, right? There's probably 1 or 2 things you're writing up there that aren't even in that space that you're interested in. Just scratch those out, because you got to care about what you're doing, right? And then, start thinking about not just what's the biggest opportunity here, but what do I actually care about the most, right? That's going to matter a lot, because you're going to put a lot more effort and energy into it. Then you just start doing, and you're in the right zone. And if you could be obsessed with a problem, that's really good. You start waking up every day thinking, I'm thinking about that problem when I go to sleep, when I'm waking up, not thinking about the solution or how much of a pain it is or how hard the customers are, but like, I'm obsessed with that problem. Then you're on the right track. It will evolve. Just get going.
Yes, and one of the common mistakes of entrepreneurs, and the research bears this out, is they don't get out the door and talk to people that would be customers. And oftentimes it becomes like a theoretical exercise. You can get all the market data you want that'll tell you this is an X billion-dollar market, but that doesn't give you someone that will pay for this particular problem or solution. And oftentimes, usually, especially in clean tech, like deep tech stuff, that customer that will pay for it is not a very visible public person. They're not out there blogging. They're kind of like a mid-level executive doing great innovation work, or they're part of the product design team, or they're part of the supply chain. And to find them actually takes a lot of work, and to have that conversation of, is this something that you'd pay for? Like, what would that look like? It takes a while to mine, and I think that is probably the stuff that doesn't get done a lot, which is to kind of mine to find that hidden person that actually is the buyer of that thing that needs that solution. But that's the legwork that I think usually doesn't get done. Yeah.
There's another question over here.
My name is Ajay Jha, and I'm from Fort Collins. And I really very interesting. Most of the podcast is I hear that story all the time. I have a question. How do you really find something very, very successful in very early stage when you select some company, that it's going to be $1 billion company, or the company which is not going to work? How do you find that? What is a really something which you find which other people are not able to find themselves?
You know $1 billion company when you see it, right?
Nope. I know that if I invest in 100, I'm statistically going to find one. So I think I'm better than most people, but 1 in 100, like, that's the rate that I'm running at. And by the way, there's a whole lot of successful companies that aren't billion-dollar companies, right? And by the way, many of those don't really care to be billion-dollar companies. They're having impact. They love what they do, and that's okay. our criteria, Techstars, is it's team, 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 market progress idea. If you've been around Techstars, you've heard that. Team, 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 it's that important. Like, what is it about these people that, makes them the right people to go do that? What insight do they have? What unfair advantage do they have? All that stuff. Market, that's what I was saying to you, right? It's more about that where I'm going to invest at the early stage, and it is exactly what you're doing. Progress, I think entrepreneurs do stuff. I don't invest in people who don't do stuff. It's a pretty easy filter. If you're just talking about doing stuff, that's a sign that you're not ready. And then ideas last because it's last. It's just bonus points, and there's not a lot of totally original stuff. But it can matter if it's a good idea. So that's probably going to change, and I know it.
I mean, this guy does it all the time, and it's you just never know, but you can see the patterns, which is a really strong team with a real passion for solving a problem, right? And that's like the base fundamentals of finding a billion-dollar company.
Pretty much, and you have to believe in the market, that it's not stagnant, it's changing. Even shrinking is okay, going away. There's something going on there. I like to put the words "people gotta" in front of the thing I'm about to invest in. People got to eat. People got to get around the city. People got to sleep somewhere, right? They don't have to terraform the moon for advertising. I've been pitched that, by the way.
Another question?
Hi, thanks. This is great. My name is David Racklin, and I'm running an incubator for actually my sons and their friends who are software guys. And following on what you just said, David, you said you got a 1 in 100 hit rate on billion-dollar companies. I'm really curious with your vast experience, never mind billion, but companies that thrive and do a lot of good. What's the success rate there? Even if they're lifestyle businesses, quote unquote.
It's really like all I can look at is the first maybe 1,500 investments, because the last 3,500 I don't know yet. And so when I give you that rate, it's from that. And, most of them fail. Most of them don't work. That's what this is, right? But doesn't mean the people are a failure. And so, hit rate to raising $5-10 million is probably 30%, right? Like there's a bunch that do that. That's great. That's not success. You might incinerate $10 million, right? That's not successful.
Like a sustainable business.
Yeah, I think about probably a third, or 20 to 30%, right? Become businesses that last. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
We do have time for a few more up front. Of course, up front. Oh, no, I'm going to do this one in the back first.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for coming today and really enjoying everything you're sharing. My name is Elon. My question to you is, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs that are seeking mentors? Where do we find them? How much value do you think a mentor has, especially in like the early startup stages?
www.techstars.com. We are running programs in Colorado. Our CEO is in Colorado. We're still here. We love doing this with our mentor network here. There are other, programs, incubators, accelerators. That's what they do, right? They create mentor networks. They help you, get in front of investors, pitch, all that kind of stuff. So there are lots of resources for that. I don't know what you would add.
It's tough, and I would say there's a lot of programs for it. Techstars is one of the great ones. There's a number of nonprofit programs, but personally, I find the best way is sort of hunt for them yourself. And oftentimes, the mentors, if you've got a particular market niche or industry sector you're trying to go into, some of the great mentors are those that maybe are just sort of retiring out of it, or just maybe they're transitioning somewhere in that industry and they're looking to kind of just get involved in something new. So people that know the industry, they know the customers, they know sort of the pain points, they know the price points, and maybe they're, doing an early retirement. They're 60 years old, they're ready for like a couple more fights, and they want to do something.
Maybe they're becoming chairman for 3 years and have a little time, and then they're going to go back in and run a thing. Like I had more time last 3 years than I do now to do things like that. The other piece you asked about is the value. I just like to tell a super quick story. I sold my first company to a public company that was then bought by a huge conglomerate. And it was a great outcome. We hadn't raised a lot of money. That's what allowed me to start angel investing. awesome. I don't tell you for that reason. I tell you because the CEO of that company that bought us, about 4 years later, said, we would have paid twice as much, right?
Oh.
I was like, you ass. Why would you say that? That's just mean. He's like, yeah, you weren't a very good negotiator. I was like, oh, okay. And then the first ever company we had acquired, we've had about 500 acquired. The first one was Social Thing. And I saw a mentor on a 10-minute call double the exit price. And it just was this full circle moment for me. Like, that's the value of mentorship. It's in a moment. It's an introduction that changes everything. It's a little help with a negotiation that doubles. That was like a $10 million double, right? As an outcome. Because you have people that have done it before, been there around you when you need them. And you're figuring out how not to take from them only, but also to give back a little bit to them. If you have a great mentor, figure out what would help them a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be huge. It's a lot of value.
A free mentor. I've got kind of this side thing where I love watching documentaries about startups and entrepreneurship. The learning is extraordinary. And as you were talking about like negotiating like acquisition prices, the documentary Netflix versus the World. Have you seen this? See, you guys don't watch startup documentaries. Mm-hmm. Amazing startup documentaries.
Only weirdos watch startup documentaries.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Netflix versus the World is amazing. There's one with Brad Feld called Print the Legend, which is the birth of the 3D printing printing industry. Those are two amazing like startup-focused documentaries about the journey, and it's almost like having someone take you through the entire learning process firsthand. And there's several other ones out there, but not a lot. There should be hundreds, but there's a few that are really good.
We're actually at time, so I would love to just, Victor and David, if you wanted to send the group off with any final wise words, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Any wise words?
Or just words, no pressure.
I just always use the same one. Good luck with your startups and don't screw it up.
You're an amazing ecosystem with amazing people and resources that have been built up over the last couple decades. Get out there, be willing to talk to folks. A lot of entrepreneurs just sort of keep it close, but that's actually not the best path, is to get out there. And also, I'll do a plug for my organization, Right to Start, is care about the broader environment in which you operate. Entrepreneurs they die deaths of 1,000 cuts, from taxes, red tape, economic development policy, home mortgages have come up, childcare issues, healthcare challenges. All these things are part of the entrepreneurial environment. Right to Start, you can join that effort. I got my amazing team that's actually here. We're doing a quarterly team retreat because we're a virtual organization across the country. And so if you go to righttostart.org, you can sign up and be part of that movement, be part of improving the entrepreneurial environment for everybody across America.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.